muted. LOL. Okay, we are live. I was muted at the beginning of that. That is interesting. So, have my caffeinated beverage here. We are live to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Week 9 fantasy takeaways. I could start it off the top right away with one of the guys on the thumbnail, but I mean, it sounds like Chase Edmonds is going to be out for a while. He suffered an ankle sprain, probably going to be out for a couple weeks. So James Conner, obviously the number 1 scoring running back on the week this week, going to be a guy that really helps some people's fantasy teams out. I know in my home league personally, the guy that had Derrick Henry also has James Conner. So he just got, a guy that can help him get by without Derrick Henry. So that's definitely good news for him. But yeah, another big takeaway too was Nick Chubb being Nick Chubb. I hope you guys bought him low. I talked about him on Tuesday as a guy that you could buy low pretty easily because a lot of people were down on him because they saw Dearness Johnson still involved. They saw, his role didn't change without Kareem Hunt. But the nice thing about what happened with Nick Chubb yesterday is his role was more or less the same, right? The Browns only ran 48 offensive plays and Nick Chubb only played 28 snaps. So Dearness Johnson was out there. But the nice thing about what happened with Nick Chubb yesterday is that he played over 50% of the routes. And traditionally, he'd been a guy that was around 25% on the season. So he was more involved in the passing game, had a little bit more of an uptick in his role. And then obviously he is as good as we think he is. And that's what kind of played out yesterday. He didn't have a whole lot of touches, but he was able to make the most of them. So definitely on those 2 running backs, they broke the DFS slate pretty much. They were like the only 2 running backs that had huge performances. DFS wise, it was a pretty big time mess. I'll probably review my lineup at some point, but I actually didn't do too bad. I know a lot of people lost a lot of money though, because a lot of the popular games didn't hit. Julian says, "What's up, man? What's up? I traded Carter for Hawkinson. Should I have traded Harris instead?" I'm assuming you're talking about Damian Harris. I would have rather traded Damian Harris than Michael Carter, if that's what you're asking. Brandon said, Ayuk in a first for Mike Williams. I'm assuming you're talking about a dynasty league. I would rather have Ayuk in a first, personally. What I saw at Ayuk yesterday was definitely encouraging to see. That's definitely a big takeaway from this week is that Brandon Ayuk, honestly, he looks to be back. Maybe not to the ceiling level that we thought he could be at coming into the season because Deebo's there. George Kittle looks great. But all these guys performing in this offense is going to make the offense better, right? And when Trey Lance takes over the starting job, he'll have an easier time acclimating to the NFL, getting better as a player because he has these guys like Brandon Ayuk who can make these spectacular catches. He has Deebo Samuel who can, take a 2-yard slant, take it to the house. He has guys like George Kittle who are able to do pretty much everything I just said for Ayuk and for Deebo Samuel except at tight end. So that is great news overall for the 49ers offense. Brandon Ayuk, again, ran, 90% of the routes and he's back to his full, allotment of snaps. It took him a couple of weeks to get going, which, sometimes maybe that's like a takeaway that we could have, in general for the entire season is that these second-year wide receiver breakouts, these rookie wide receiver breakouts, even some of these third-year guys, maybe they take a couple of weeks to get going. They're still young players. It takes them a while to get back into the swing of things. And Ayuk specifically, apparently he was having problems like practicing or something like that. His practice habits, I guess, weren't the greatest. So maybe that's, the difference in his play right now. What in the actual fuck? Cowboys, Bills, Chiefs, Rams put up stinkers. Yeah, man. Like I said, the DFS slate was wild. A lot of people were like, myself included. I actually had a couple lineups that ended up min cashing that had Bills stacks in them because I hit in other places. But yeah, it was really, really weird how the Bills, like in what seemed like an absolute dream matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, how they only put up 6 points. Like that is the most wild thing I've ever seen in the NFL, right? It just proves that we really don't know anything. When you see a Bills team that seemingly looks unstoppable on offense play against a Jags defense that is, 32nd across the board in every major defensive category, like it is so wild that they were able to hold the Bills offense like that. That being said, tighten up. Yep. Good win for your Titans there. And the Raiders. Yep. Hoping this Chubb game can convince the Javonte owner to give me him and a first. Yeah. If you're in a dynasty league right now and you're rebuilding, and you have Nick Chubb, and you can get Javonte Williams and a first-round pick for Nick Chubb, that is a phenomenal package to make because, while Javonte Williams, again, is not taking over the starting job to the point that we thought he was going to because Melvin Gordon is still heavily involved, Melvin Gordon is a free agent after this year. Javonte Williams is showing that once Melvin Gordon is gone, he's going to be just fine. This isn't some, fantasy projection that we're putting onto Javonte Williams. because every time he touches the ball, he's doing it. He's just, not getting the opportunities enough. And it's not like I could say, oh, we'll just take Melvin Gordon off the field, because Melvin Gordon is playing well in his own right. Justin says, win now, dynasty here. Just lost Derrick Henry. Got a guy trying to buy Chase Claypool from me for Elijah Mitchell. Do we think Elijah Mitchell has long-term value? I have plenty of wide receivers. Gibby at RB2. Okay, so the one thing I'll say about Elijah Mitchell is, I don't think that's a yes or no question. When you said, do we think Elijah Mitchell has long-term value? Again, we like to talk about ranges of outcomes. Is there a range of outcome where Elijah Mitchell is, this mid RB2 type for the duration of his rookie contract, and maybe even a little bit better than that, because we saw him get involved in the passing game yesterday? But do we think that's in the range of outcomes? I do. I do think what we've seen from Elijah Mitchell has been, this guy's a good player. Kyle Shanahan clearly trusts him. And, we got some of these other guys, as Raheem Mosterts and stuff. They're going to be free agents after this year. So I think they're going to stick with a guy like Elijah Mitchell. But do I think his long-term value is safe? No, I don't. I think he could have long-term value, but it's like a 50-50 shot. So I personally would not make that trade. I think Chase Claypool's long-term value is secured. One, by the fact that he's a wide receiver and he's not dependent on his coaching staff. He can, as long as he's out there running routes, which he is, he's going to command targets and things of that nature. So Chase Claypool to me is just a far safer asset long-term than Elijah Mitchell. I think I personally wouldn't make that trade. If you're going to trade Chase Claypool away, I need somebody with a more secure long-term future at running back. What a weird week of games. Ayuk finally. Yeah, man. Ayuk, I'm very happy that Ayuk is saving some of my best ball teams right now, because I had a lot invested in that guy. And the fact that he was being just absolutely useless for a while is definitely unfortunate, but good news that he's getting back on track. Wild weekend. Yes, sir. Yes, it was. You guys saying to start Smith was awesome. Yeah. Speaking of, I'm actually going to show you guys right now. I'll show you guys my best DFS lineup of the week. I'm not going to show you all of them because I did have some bad ones, but this was my my best DFS lineup of the week. I was able to finish, I guess, in the top 150. I believe this. I can't remember exactly how many people are in this contest. I think it's like, so there's 5,000 people in this contest, or 6,000 people. I had some stinkers in this one. I entered this contest 4 times, and I had $65 cash in my second lineup, and this was my highest one. I ended up getting $125 out of this one. I was actually up near 200 for the duration of, the entire 4 o'clock slate. But then a couple of the touchdowns at the end of the games kind of screwed me. The fact that Allen Lazard scored on the Chiefs defense definitely hurt my defense. But basically what I did, to your Devontae Smith point, was I took Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen, and I used them as kind of leverage plays against Austin Eckler, because I knew Austin Eckler would be very popular. And you could see 4.6% for Herbert, 7.5 for Keenan Allen. Those guys were pretty low owned in this specific contest. And I was able to run it back on the other side of things with Devontae Smith. And the reason I said Devontae Smith was a good play was because the Chargers were missing their 2 starting corners. Now, there's a lot of talk in, GPP land, like people that play DFS all the time, that wide receiver cornerback matchups don't matter. And I would say they don't matter to a degree, especially when you're talking about elite wide receivers. I don't think they matter then. If you're going to make the argument that DeAndre Hopkins or Stephon Diggs versus a good corner versus a bad corner, he usually doesn't make too much of a difference there. But when you're talking about a guy like Devontae Smith, who isn't quite an elite wide receiver at this point in his career, he's just, a number 1 receiver that is going to need to have good matchups in order to take advantage of them. I think they matter then. That's kind of when I use wide receiver cornerback matchups, especially in a DFS sense. But yeah, I did have some misses in this lineup. I had Emmanuel Sanders, but Dalton Schultz at a low ownership was okay. I ate the chalk on Hunter Renfrow and the Chiefs defense. Running backs didn't necessarily prove too well for me. I actually did want to put Dalvin Cook. I did want to replace Dalvin Cook with Nick Chubb before this happened, but I probably should have, because I would have won a lot more money if I did. But nonetheless, that was one of my biggest lineups anyway. But yeah, Smith, do I think I can continue it? Do I think he will continue it rest of season? I do think Smith is a guy that was a good buy low candidate coming into this week. Obviously, it's going to be harder to buy him low now. But I do think, from a confidence perspective, he's a rookie wide receiver. Having good performances is never going to hurt him, because he's going to feel more confident, feel better as a player. And I do think Smith is going to be, continuously a top 30 play rest of the season. I'm not sure how much better he's going to be than that, but I think you're going to get performances like this here and there. James Conner putting up 40 is ugly. Yeah. Honestly, I never knew that was going to happen. That was pretty wild. I actually did. I played Chase Edmonds in 1 or 2 of my DFS lineups because I thought he was a good play this week. I guess the logic was sound, obviously, because it did affect James Conner, but the fact that he got injured definitely didn't help. So that's unfortunate. Bryson says Elijah Moore season. Yes, sir. Elijah Moore, probably. Danny will talk about him tomorrow as one of the biggest waiver wire ads. He definitely, proved why he was so highly touted by us. Like we loved the kid coming out of school. And when you watch the catches that he had, if you just like went back and watched them on every one of those plays, he was nimble, right? That's the type of route runner he is. He just knows how to get open. So that's what makes me, like, when I was watching him in college, I'm like, that's what makes me think he's going to be a successful NFL player, because he reminded me so much of Tyler Lockett that, yes, he's a small receiver and, he doesn't have, a 6'4" frame and 250 pounds or whatever, like DK Metcalf or Calvin Johnson, but he knows how to get open and he has really good hands and he's really fast too and really agile. So that was really exciting to see from Elijah Moore. I think this is going to be a guy that hopefully establishes himself down the stretch of the season. Now, I don't know how much of it changes if Corey Davis comes back, and he'll probably be back next week. But I think at the very least, Elijah Moore's got to edge out Keelan Cole for playing time. It should be Crowder, Corey Davis, and Elijah Moore on every snap. What game did you find most interesting? Any players jump at you that you were surprised by? That's a good question, actually. I would say when it comes to the interesting games, so I'm just going to go up to the list of games on this PFF thing right here so I know what ones all happened. I do think that Niners game was pretty interesting for a number of reasons. The Nyuk stuff, of course, and James Conner as well. But one of the most interesting games that I probably found was the Kansas City Green Bay game, just because this Kansas City team, man, like I heard Rich Rebar talk about the fact that teams are starting to like bracket Kansas City. They're like playing a lot of cover 2 and a lot of like don't get beat deep by Kansas City, because obviously for the first couple of years of Mahomes' career, like he thrived off of these big touchdowns to Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman, even DeMarcus Robinson, and like just big plays in general. And that's not what's happening right now. Like the big play percentage is way, way lower than it's been traditionally for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. So again, like I think we got to temper expectations a little bit for Patrick Mahomes and for Tyreek Hill, because teams are just playing them differently. Now, the kind of other side of the coin is that they're using their running backs more in the passing game. And of course, now it's because CEH is out of the lineup, but they're being forced to throw underneath a lot more. And ideally, you want Tyreek Hill getting these big touchdowns, but it's just not happening right now. That's the way that they're playing each other. I also I did find the Minnesota and Baltimore game very interesting as well, just for a number of reasons. I think the Baltimore offense is really showing that they're way more diverse than we could have anticipated coming into the season. They are throwing the ball at a very successful rate right now. And with, Marquise Brown playing the way he is, man, he's playing like a Pro Bowl wide receiver. I don't even know how to explain how I didn't see that coming. Like Marquise Brown is playing way better than I thought coming into the season. Mark Andrews, of course, being there, Rashad Bateman making some splash plays. They might, be in the market for a guy like Odell Beckham as well. So I'm very impressed with what I've seen by the Ravens offense as well. Matthew Stafford with a major underperformance. Yeah, that was really shocking to see, to be honest, because this was a freaking easy matchup for Matthew Stafford. Like I expected Woods, Kupp, Stafford to be, top 10 receivers and a top 5 quarterback on the week this week, because Titans defense has just not been good against the pass. And they do have, of course, they have playmakers like Kevin Byard back there making an elite play on the pick 6, but Matthew Stafford just with an absolute stinker. It happens. Am I worried about Matthew Stafford? Not really. Like if anybody in your league is panicking about Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, any of these guys in this offense, I'd probably buy low on those guys, but I'm personally not worried about it. Somebody tried trading my first round Eckler and gave me a second rounder Tyreek Hill. I rejected big time. Sorry, my dog's barking right now. Rejected big time with DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, Jamar Chase on my squad. Yeah, so if you have a receiving core like that, there's no reason to give up a running back like Austin Eckler. I also think in a vacuum too, I would rather have Austin Eckler than Tyreek Hill rest of season anyway, because like I said, you got to temper expectations a little bit with Tyreek Hill. And Eckler to me is just a bona fide top 3 running back rest of season. So yeah, I don't mind that at all. Great show. Appreciate that. Opinion: looking to trade Kamara, Ingram, and Robert Woods for Terry McLaurin and Joe Mixon, or Kamara, Ingram, and Robert Woods for Zeke and Antonio Brown. I'm good at running back. I have Swift. I think that's supposed to be Chicago. I don't know who Chi is. I'm supposed to be Chicago. I don't know. So on the trades, I would say Kamara, Ingram, and Robert Woods for Terry McLaurin and Joe Mixon. I personally would rather have Kamara, Ingram, and Robert Woods. Mainly just like, and Ingram isn't really that important. He's kind of just your handcuff, but Kamara and Joe Mixon, there's a pretty big difference between those guys, in my opinion, just from what I expect from them rest of the season. And Robert Woods and Terry McLaurin, I don't think the difference between those two guys, because I would prefer Terry McLaurin, I don't think the difference between those guys is big enough to counteract the difference between Kamara and Joe Mixon for me. So I would rather have Kamara and Robert Woods side of that one. Kamara, Ingram, and Woods for Zeke and Antonio Brown. This one's probably a bit closer just because Zeke is, I view Zeke as better long-term than what I view Joe Mixon as. But Antonio Brown, again, is also worse than Terry McLaurin, especially with the injury he's dealing with. So I personally would hold pat. I probably wouldn't make the trade, either trade, to be honest. Won by 3 points. I switched Edmonds out for Gore, and somehow it worked. Yeah, so that's a results over process situation there. I definitely would not have done that, but it did work out for you. This guy says, Edmonds has a high ankle sprain. James Conner going to smash. Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's specifically been called a high ankle sprain, but they did say he sprained his ankle, and it doesn't sound like he's going to play at least this week or next week, probably, I would say. He's probably going to be out for, I'm not really sure when their bye is. They must have a bye coming up soon. I'd be curious to know if it's like week 12, week 13. He'll probably come back after the bye. I know you can't trust him too much because of Shanahan, but 5 targets makes me hopeful. There has to be consistency first, I guess. I'm guessing you're talking about Elijah Mitchell. But the targets definitely were helpful for him. I wasn't expecting to see that. He was a guy, when I watched him at Louisiana Lafayette, I was like, this guy's capable in the passing game. Like, he's not anything special or anything, but he can absorb a couple targets a game. He kind of reminded me, the player I compared Elijah Mitchell to, I believe, was like Carlos Hyde, like Marlon Mack type. Like, I did see, flashes of a 3-down skill set. I didn't think he would, ever be much more than, like, if he ever got a feature workload, 1,100 to 1,200 yards rushing type of running back. Like, I don't think he's going to be a 1,500 yard rusher, but he did, flash the ability in all facets of the game. Burner's burner. I have Kittle and Hawkinson, and I'm desperate at wide receiver. Who should I be targeting for one of my tight ends? I would say with those guys, I don't really want to sell Kittle based on what I saw yesterday. I personally don't. Like, I know he's probably going to be a guy that people talk about as a sell high candidate because he did have a big game, but I personally would rather keep him. So TJ Hawkinson, I'd probably be looking to get a wide receiver in that mid-range around the Robert Woods kind of area, Chase Claypool, T. Higgins area, I think is what you're probably going to be looking at for a guy like TJ Hawkinson. I don't think you're going to get, Terry McLaurin or somebody like that for TJ Hawkinson. If you are, go after somebody like that. But I think TJ Hawkinson, more so you're looking at the range of like a Robert Woods type wide receiver. But I think you're probably in good shape. You could also try shopping both of them. If somebody's willing to sell the farm for George Kittle, then obviously do that. But Hawkinson's probably the guy that I'm looking to shop if I'm you. I picked up T.Y. Hilton and dropped Nelson Aguilar last week. Do you think T.Y. will get production this year? I have Mike Evans, Chase Claypool, Manuel Sanders, Jamar Chase at wide receiver. I honestly, I don't mind dropping Nelson Aguilar for T.Y. Hilton just to see what happens, but there's no chance I start T.Y. Hilton over any of the options that you have personally. And T.Y. Hilton, to me, he's not, a guy that's going to be consistent. He'll probably have a big play or two the rest of the season, and that's probably it. He's not a guy that I'm overly excited about. Like James, well, if you have somebody like Elijah Moore or Rashad Bateman or like a rookie, Terrace Marshall, even, like, I would just rather stash a guy like that than T.Y. Hilton because you're not going to need T.Y. Hilton with the receivers that you have. Who should I target in a 2-quarterback league? I have Mahomes, Allen, and DJ Moore. If you have Mahomes and Allen, what do you need to trade for a quarterback for? Unless you're trying to trade away one of those quarterbacks. I'm not really sure what you're asking there if you want to kind of clarify. Opinion looking to trade. Okay, I already answered that. Please ask your questions only once. Any possibility Deontay Johnson scores more than 25.82 points to get me the win this week? Deontay Johnson gets enough targets that he absolutely could do that. But he'll probably need a big play and a touchdown or something like that to get there. So it's in the cards. I would say it's like a 5-10% chance of happening though. He's going to in a full PPR, Greg. Yeah, in a full PPR, he definitely could get there because he's going to get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 receptions on a ceiling game for him. Had Eckler and Lamb disappoint me. Yeah, they both disappointed me as well. While going up against James Conner, yikes. I'm willing to just say this week was a fluke and move on, but I did trade Myers for Ayuk on Friday. Feel really good about it. Yeah, I definitely don't mind a trade like that because with Myers, like, what is his ceiling realistically? He's a guy that gets, on a good week, we're talking about 6 for 60. Like, that's like a good week for Jacoby Myers. And of course, he has never scored a touchdown in his career. So you just can't trust him as anything more than like a back end wide receiver 3, high end wide receiver 4, like top 40 wide receiver, because he just doesn't give you any kind of semblance of ceiling. At least with Ayuk, he's going to be more inconsistent from a volume perspective than Myers. But if you give Jacoby Myers 6 targets a week, he's going to get you 40 yards. If you give Brandon Ayuk 6 targets a week, every other week, he'll give you like 90 yards and a touchdown or something like that. So that's definitely a good move that I think you made there. First good matchup. Yeah. Should I try to trade Mixon, Pittman, and McLaurin/Judy for CMC and Keenan Allen? That's a lot to give up, I would say. Mixon, Pittman, and McLaurin. So if you can make that Judy and not McLaurin, I would rather keep McLaurin than Judy. Mixon, Pittman, and Judy for CMC and Allen. I suppose if this is a shallower league and maybe you only start 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 flex, I don't mind making a trade like this to upgrade your starting lineup, but it does hurt your depth a little bit. So overall, I think this is an okay trade. I am a little not concerned about CMC, but I just don't think this offense is going to be very good the rest of the season. Like Sam Darnold looks awful. I would say that is one of the to answer the previous question, one of the games that surprised you this year? Sam Darnold just sucks, man. Like I didn't think he was going to be this bad, because I'm a firm believer of, nature or nurture over nature. Like I believe in these coaching staffs to be able to coach up their quarterbacks and get them to play the best football that they can. And it looked like that was the case at the beginning of the season, right? We saw Sam Darnold look like the best Sam Darnold we've ever seen in the NFL for the first 3 or 4 games or whatever it was. And then he just looked like the same old Jet Sam Darnold the past couple of weeks. And it's really frustrating for DJ Moore and for Christian McCaffrey and everybody else involved, because it looked like this Carolina Panthers offense was going to turn a corner and be one of the better offenses in the league after the first couple of weeks, because it looked like Sam Darnold had turned a corner. And at this point, I think you can make the argument that PJ Walker needs to be in there, because Sam Darnold's just been bad. If A-Rod was in the game, Chiefs would easily lose. Yeah, I totally agree. I think Jordan Love was kind of in over his head, and I'm not going to kill the guy too much. It was his first NFL start. But yeah, if Aaron Rodgers was playing, I think they lose this game. The unfortunate thing for me, and I'm kind of in my home redraft league that I care the most about, I didn't have a good week. I had like 78 points or something like that, but I can't really blame it too much on results, because it was like Davante Adams had like 14 targets and AJ Brown had like 11 targets, and they just didn't do anything on those targets because their quarterback play wasn't the greatest, and the game environment was a little off and stuff too. So, I mean, I'm not really concerned about anybody involved in the Packers offense, especially, Green Bay would have won this game if Aaron Rodgers was playing. Hopefully he's back next week. I need Najee to put up 90 plus odds. That's not going to happen. What to do with Mixon? Been insane. Sat on my bench with a monster game, but seems touchdown dependent. I mean, I'm curious why Mixon was on your bench. You must have had just really good options. I think I can't remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I told you to start both of the Panthers players over Joe Mixon, which I apologize for, Yadiel. But yeah, Mixon at this point, he's got to be in your lineup every single week, simply due to volume. He's kind of matchup proof from that perspective, because this was a really bad matchup. This Cleveland Browns run defense had been very good. But I think with Joe Mixon, we got to remember that this guy gets 20, 25 opportunities a game. So more often than not, yeah, he is touchdown dependent, but so is like every running back. Most running backs are touchdown dependent, and Joe Mixon will have an opportunity for a touchdown more often than not, because he has such a big workload in an offense that's able to move the ball consistently. So I apologize for the start-sit decision that I made you do there. Had the hard decision to sit Dalvin, Chubb, and Mixon, and I benched Dalvin. Hell yeah. Okay, yeah, that is a gutty call. I would have benched Mixon there if I was faced with that call, prior to this week. So good on you for making the right decision. But that took some nuts, I would say. Who's your favorite player of all time? Mine's LaDainian Tomlinson for the Chargers. Yeah. So to me, LT, what you called LT, is the real LT is behind me. Lawrence Taylor is the only LT that I know, but even though I wasn't alive to watch him play. But Rondé Barber, also behind me, is my favorite player of all time. Personally, he was the guy that I grew up watching with the Tampa Bay Bucks. And if I could play in the NFL, I would always want to play cornerback. It's just the position that I really love. So yeah, Rondé Barber is definitely one of my favorite players. I also really liked, some of the other better corners coming up too when I was a kid, like Darrelle Revis and Champ Bailey and some of those guys. Also, opinion on CMC looks good in the second half when the shackles were off. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey will be just fine. Christian McCaffrey got a limited workload, which is expected, right? He was coming off of a hamstring injury, only played, I think it was 49% of the snaps or something like that, only got a handful of touches, but Christian McCaffrey should be back to full status Christian McCaffrey by next week, if I had to guess, if not, 70, 80, 90% of full status Christian McCaffrey. So he's going to be a top 5 running back rest of the season for me. And hopefully PJ Walker can start games because it can't get any worse than what Sam Darnold's doing. Should I trade Nick Chubb and Kyle Pitts for Terry McLaurin, Saquon Barkley, and Dalton Schultz? I got no flex. See, that's a risky trade just because of Saquon's injury and what Nick Chubb just did. I don't really like trading away an elite positional advantage like what Kyle Pitts represents to me, but if you have no flex option, I don't mind that because I guess in this position now, you're going to have Terry McLaurin as a flex option, which is fine. And you get a decent tight end in return in Dalton Schultz. But yeah, this is a really tough trade to make because you're sacrificing some elite difference making, potential at tight end with Kyle Pitts. You're acquiring a risky guy in Saquon Barkley when you have a guy that's not very risky in Nick Chubb. But I think I would make this trade in your position. I think I would make this trade. Take the plunge on Saquon Barkley because we don't play scared. We try to win championships, and that's like a championship caliber trade, right? Because if Saquon Barkley becomes, Saquon Barkley, then you're gonna probably win that trade by a mile. So happy that CMC is back. Yeah, big facts. Really needed him. Now I'm 4-5. Yeah, I have a couple teams. I'm not even kidding. Where in our listener league, my team looks so good on paper, but for one reason or another, I've had guys out certain weeks, and I've had the most points for against me in the entire league. And I'm in like 3-6 and my team looks just so good on paper. I'm like, it's so surprising to me that I'm able to continue losing in such heartbreaking fashion too. Are you concerned about Jalen Hurts' extremely low passing volume the last couple of weeks? Am I concerned about Jalen Hurts? I probably a little bit. Jalen Hurts to me was a guy that was always going to be kind of like a feast or famine quarterback anyway, because he does primarily rely on rushing, and certain games teams are just going to take that away, right? Like if you're a defensive coordinator going up to play against Jalen Hurts, like your job is to keep him in the pocket because he's not going to beat you that way. So if you can keep him like that, then you're going to be just fine. And teams are doing that to some extent. So Jalen Hurts having to rely on his arm to get fantasy production is never going to be a winning battle. So I am concerned about Jalen Hurts for the fact that he isn't, like, from his fantasy value, he's not going to provide consistency. He's going to be a guy that is great for DFS tournaments, is great for, when you need a spike week, great for best ball, but not a guy that is going to be very consistent long-term. And it does, low passing volume and things of that nature is going to hurt guys like Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert as well. Other position. I have Ryan on the bench and they are selling me. I'm confused what you're talking about here. Anyway. Should I keep both Herbert and David in my dynasty league? Okay. So David Montgomery, I'm guessing, is who you're talking about. I've never heard him called David before. Yeah, I would keep both of those guys. If you're trying to win right now, like you use Herbert as long as Montgomery's out. It sounds like Montgomery might be back this week, and then Herbert is a great probably handcuff like Alexander Madison tier of running back from a dynasty perspective. But yeah, beating the Bucs and losing to the Falcons is the most Saints thing ever. But signing OBJ got to be a must. Wide receivers plus Troutman can't catch. Dude, your offense makes me like physically ill watching the Saints passing offense. Like, it is so bad. If I was Sean Payton, I would literally drop every play for Alvin Kamara because he's the only plus, not even like he's a superstar, right? Like, I know Alvin Kamara is a superstar, but he's like the only plus starter on your offense, legitimate. Like, everybody else is like a below average NFL player, like not even a starting caliber player. So yeah, your offense is a complete dumpster fire. I'm not even sure OBJ would help, to be honest. Like, your offense just stinks. So if I'm being honest, I'm really not scared of the New Orleans Saints from a playoff perspective because it's so hard to win in this league now without having a consistent offense, and the Saints just don't. I really need a running back like Mitchell for this season, though. Our running backs are Henderson, Gibson, Dillon, Howard. Claypool is capped by trash Big Ben and crowded wide receiver. I need a running back or I'm screwed in my dynasty. Yeah, again, if you're win now, you have no chance in 2022 and 2023. Again, I personally wouldn't make the trade. I think it's a bad move long term. Like, Claypool is going to have more value than Elijah Mitchell long term. If you can shop Claypool for a different running back that has more long term value, like, I would rather have Leonard Fournette than Elijah Mitchell because Leonard Fournette is going to help you win now, and he's also going to have more long-term appeal than a guy like Elijah Mitchell, at least from a safety standpoint. I think he's going to be safer long-term because he's a former top 5 pick. Everybody knows that he's, a pretty coveted running back, and I think he has a very good chance to get re-signed to Tampa Bay. I would rather have a guy like Fournette, and you might even be able to get, Fournette plus a pick or Fournette plus, another running back or a wide receiver in exchange for Chase Claypool, because Chase Claypool to me should be viewed as a top 20 dynasty wide receiver. So I don't want to sell him for what I view Elijah Mitchell as, like a top 35 dynasty running back. I think it's just, you're losing too much value there. And especially at the running back position, if I'm going to trade away a young wide receiver that I believe in long-term, I want to be getting a guy that I believe in at running back long-term. Like if you're going to trade Claypool away, I want to get Javonte Williams in exchange. Like I want to get a guy that I believe in long-term. And as much as I like Elijah Mitchell, I don't know how his role is going to be, next year or even a couple weeks from now. Like it's Kyle Shanahan. It's always a risk. Do you think Claypool will score over 12.5 points today in full PPR? You need him to score less. Okay, so in full PPR, that's not a very high bar. 12.5 points in full PPR is pretty doable for a guy like Chase Claypool. All he needs is to score a touchdown or catch 5 or 6 balls in this game. So I would say he's probably pretty likely to do that. I'd say 50, 60, 70% chance that he does that. So hopefully he doesn't for your sake. But assuming Javonte Williams stays healthy through the rest of the season, what round do you think Javonte will be drafted in? I got him in the 5th round this year. So with Javonte Williams, it's all going to depend what happens in his backfield. Assuming Melvin Gordon is no longer there, which is probably a safe assumption, I would say Javonte Williams will be a 2nd round pick in redraft next year. Like legitimate. Like we say this all the time. Going into the season, people at the beginning of the offseason last year, they were under the impression that Cam Akers would be like a 3rd, 4th round pick. But the reality of the situation is when you're a young, talented running back in line for a feature workload, you're going to get pushed up draft boards. So if Javonte Williams is alone in the Broncos backfield, maybe they add, a crappy veteran to help back him up, he's going to be a 2nd round pick in redraft leagues for sure. And in Dynasty, probably a 3rd round pick in Superflex. Yeah, you told me CMC and DJ Moore over Mixon, still 90% to win. Okay, so good thing for that. But yeah, going forward, I think I believed a little bit too much in DJ Moore this week for my liking, because I knew Sam Darnold was probably not going to have the greatest game. And DJ Moore, honestly, DJ Moore could have had a bigger game. He had a red zone target, end zone target could have worked out for him. But yeah, Joe Mixon definitely was a big yikes there. All good. Yeah, no worries. Should I trade Debo for Debo or Jefferson? Debo, I probably wouldn't trade for right now just because of the calf injury that he's dealing with. And he's been a guy that's dealt with injuries in the past. So I personally wouldn't trade for a guy like Debo Samuel at the moment. Justin Jefferson, he had a big week this week, so it's going to be a little harder to trade for him. But yeah, if you can get any kind of discount on Justin Jefferson, I don't mind trading for him at all, because I view him as a top 6, top 8 wide receiver the rest of the season. What's Jarvis Landry's rest of season outlook? Thanks. Jarvis Landry is going to continue to be who he's always been, which is a top 36 wide receiver, but probably nothing more than that. Again, he's pretty much just Jacoby Myers with a bit more upside to score touchdowns and 10 plus target upside on any given week. So I would say Jarvis Landry's rest of season outlook is a top 36 wide receiver. That's pretty much what you're looking at. He's going to be a guy that you can throw into your flex play, but if he's your wide receiver 1 or 2 on your team, then you're probably in trouble. Trying to upgrade either my starting running backs, Zeke, Saquon, Mixon, or wide receivers, McLaurin, Hopkins, Diggs, Pittman. Who should I try and package in an 18 PPR? See, it's really unfortunate that some of those guys are not performing for you, because on paper, that looks like a very good receiving core and running back core. If you're going to trade one of these guys, I probably would try and package like a guy like Pittman and a guy, I don't know. It's really tough because in an 8-team league, you're always looking for studs, right? So if you can package Pittman and Mixon, who've had some good performances, I would say, and go out and acquire, maybe a Dalvin Cook or something like that, then maybe you could do that. But even then, it's pretty tough to give up that kind of equity and that kind of depth for one player. But if you can take Mixon and Pittman and go out and get Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler, somebody like that, I think that'd be a move that I'd be looking to make. But your wide receivers right now are all like buy low candidates. So I probably wouldn't be looking to trade most of your wide receivers just because they're kind of at their like floor value right now. And you're probably not going to get what you anticipated getting for those guys. Should I trade George Kittle and James Conner for Travis Kelsey? No, I don't think I would. With Chase Edmonds out for as long as he's going to be out, and George Kittle kind of reminding us why he's George Kittle. I think the Kittle and Kelsey conversation is closer than a guy like James Conner kind of makes up that difference. If it was just Kittle for Kelsey straight up, I'd rather have Kelsey. But James Conner to me is a guy that's going to be valuable the next couple of weeks. So I'd rather not give him up for a slight upgrade at tight end. Just traded Gaskin and Bateman for Pittman Jr. I have Hollywood, McLaurin, and Pittman as my wide receivers, and JT and Eckler as my running backs. I think that's a good trade for Pittman. I think that's good value. Surprisingly, you actually kind of got him on like a low for even though he's like performing really well. So I think that's a great move that you made there, Nelson. And I think your receiving core is shaking out pretty well, and your running backs are obviously really good. So you got two probably top 5 running backs the rest of the season. So I think you're in a great spot there. Great move. I traded Waddle for Judy PPR. Did I lose? No, I'd rather have Judy rest of the season. I have Hawk and Kittle. Which one should I keep? 10-man full PPR. I would rather have Kittle if you can shop Hawkinson. Like I think, I don't know if that's the same person that asked that question, but somebody asked a question earlier about Hawkinson and Kittle, but I would rather have Kittle rest of the season. All right. Thanks, man. Good takes. Appreciate it. Justin, I traded away CMC for Henderson and Diggs last week. I don't know if I made the right decision anymore. I mean, I'm always wary of trading for a guy like Darrell Henderson just because he is such a product of his situation. And when you see, like last night, his situation wasn't elevating him. Like the Rams offense wasn't very good and wasn't able to move the ball consistently, then Darrell Henderson isn't very good, right? Like that's kind of what's going to happen with Darrell Henderson. Christian McCaffrey does well in spite of his situation because he's that good and because he gets that much usage. Darrell Henderson is not going to be the difference maker that Christian McCaffrey is, but then again, you're getting a guy like Stephon Diggs on top of Darrell Henderson. So if you needed the depth and you needed more, stud players to fill out your starting roster, I think that's a good move. But if you didn't need the depth and you didn't need the guys to fill out your starting roster, and this is like a shallow league, like an 8 or a 10-man, I would have rather had Christian McCaffrey probably. Dalvin or Najee rest of season. So this is an interesting question because, I mean, recency bias would say Najee Harris has been better and has been more consistent, but I will still rather have Dalvin Cook because for the simple fact that they both get similar volume and they're both clearly the alpha of their offense in terms of their running back core. But the Vikings offense, I trust more to move the ball consistently, and I also trust them more to use Dalvin Cook as the feature part of their offense. And I think Dalvin Cook is the better player, and he has more breakaway play upside. So I would rather have Dalvin Cook rest of the season, but it's pretty close. Like they're both top 5 running backs for me rest of the season, most likely. Do I trade Emmanuel Sanders for Justin Jefferson? Yes, instantly. Who would trade away Justin Jefferson for Emmanuel Sanders? What could I get if I trade Marquise Brown away? Probably something pretty good, to be honest, because Marquise Brown is performing pretty well. So if you can get a top 10 type of wide receiver for Marquise Brown, like Justin Jefferson, like Keenan Allen, like trying to think who else would be kind of in that range. I don't even think I'd rather have the Bucks receivers than Marquise Brown, Evans and Godwin, but like, man, he's right there. He's right in that range where like you're talking about a top 15, top 20 receiver rest of the season with Marquise Brown. So I don't even think you necessarily need to sell him high because I think what's happening is sustainable for him. So, but if you can sell him for Deontay Johnson, for DeAndre Hopkins, for Justin Jefferson, for Jamar Chase, for Keenan Allen, for Chris Godwin, for Mike Evans, that's probably like the cutoff. Like, I don't know if I can say definitively that I'd rather have DJ Moore than Marquise Brown rest of the season. I actually think maybe Marquise Brown is probably the safer bet because his offense is just so much better. And like AJ Brown, you could also throw into that category, DK Metcalf as well. But yeah, I think Marquise Brown fits right in that conversation. And I think this week on our Friday show that me and Danny do together, we're probably going to update our rest of season rankings again. So we'll probably discuss a guy like Marquise Brown at length because he is a guy that's definitely improved his value. Yes. What the fuck? Yeah, exactly. What do we do with DJ Moore? Because this is not good. Honestly, I would hold him. I would hold him because I think they're going to bench Sam Darnold and maybe PJ Walker's better. That's pretty, I know it sucks because DJ Moore looked like he was a guy that was going to be a top 5, top 10 wide receiver at the beginning of the season. But this guy's the new DeAndre Hopkins. He's the new Terry McLaurin. He just can't get quarterback play to save his life. So hopefully they fix that in the offseason. They go get Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson or something like that. But DJ Moore is probably a hold for me at this point because I don't think you're going to get a whole lot for him. if somebody's willing to buy in and like I said, you can get Marquise Brown or something for him, then maybe I'm willing to do that. But DJ Moore is probably just a guy I would hold until PJ Walker starts or they have an easy matchup and he goes off or something. Any trades you would make with this team, 12-team PPR or half PPR, Hurts, CMC, Saquon, Swift. That's a very good running back core. Diggs, DJ Moore, AJ Brown, Smith, Bateman, Waller. I honestly think you're in great shape. I wouldn't make any trades if I were you. Maybe if you want to try and get a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts, a guy that's a little bit more consistent, maybe you could take a guy like Bateman and Hurts or like a guy like Bateman and Hurts and go after a guy that's like kind of not performing well right now. Like maybe if somebody's worried about Kyler Murray, you go after somebody like him. Maybe if somebody is worried about Matthew Stafford, you could go after somebody like that. I just want a little bit more of a consistent quarterback than a guy like Jalen Hurts for a team like this, but I think you're still fine even if you hold Jalen Hurts. I have Lamar. Should I keep Taysom with only a 6-player bench? No, I would. If you have Lamar Jackson, you're never going to bench Lamar Jackson as long as he's on the field, and he's already had his bye week. So I would just hold Lamar Jackson and not roster a second quarterback. Saints offense blows. I'm stressing with Kamara. I'm 5-4, won 4 in a row. So you were 1-4 at one point. So that's good news for you. What is Kamara and Woods worth trading for? Of AJ Brown, Swift, Clyde Edwards. What is Kamara and Woods worth trading? Okay, yeah. So you're the one who asked about Kamara and Ingram and Woods and stuff. If I'm going to trade away Kamara, I'm going to need a stud running back in return. So you already mentioned Mixon and Zeke Elliott. Like those, that's fine. If you get a guy like that. But I also need Stephon Diggs. Right. So if you're going to trade away Kamara and Woods, I need the gap to be the bigger with the wide receivers than it is with the running back. So if you trade away Kamara and Woods and you get Austin Eckler and Stephon Diggs, then I think that's a good trade. Or if you get Najee Harris and DeAndre Hopkins, I think that's a good trade. So what I need, like I said, is the wide receiver gap to be bigger than the running back gap that you're giving up. You should remind people every once in a while to hit the like. There's only like 8 likes. Yeah, come on, guys. Hit the like button, please. Yeah, it takes you 2 seconds. It helps us out tremendously. So please hit the like button if I've answered a question of yours. If you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button. I think we're going to hit 8,000 this week because we're currently at like 70. Let me look right now exactly what we're at. We are at 7927. So this week we will hit 8,000 subscribers. If you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button. Do I trade Knox for Gesicki? Yeah, I would. I would rather have Mike Gesicki. His target share is way more secure. He's a bigger part of his offense. Knox is a guy that's going to be a big play threat, but that's about it. He's not a huge part of the Bills' offense. Thoughts on AJ Brown? Not concerned. 11 targets. Again, not concerned at all. So if anybody is worried about AJ Brown in your leagues, then I would go after him. I'm not going to talk about him as a buy low candidate this week because I've already talked about him twice. But he is a guy that is probably a buy low candidate if somebody's worried. Traded Mike Williams away for Mark Andrews. Needed a tight end. I don't hate that move. Mike Williams, the interesting thing, and somebody asked what my biggest takeaways were, Mike Williams is actually being used a lot more like Mike Williams of the past, right? Where he's more of a downfield threat, not necessarily a guy that is being used closer to the line of scrimmage or in that number 1 X receiver role. Over the past couple of weeks, in week 5, he had a 15.5 ADOT, 16.2 in week 6. Then they had a bye week in week 7, 14.0 last week. In week 8, and I don't have week 9's numbers yet, but I'm imagining based on what I saw that he was targeted more downfield again. So trading him away might not have been the worst thing in the world after his huge blow up performances in the first couple of weeks of the season, because they've kind of shifted his usage back to what it used to be. So that is definitely a little weird, but I think that's a good move if you needed a tight end. Mixon missing on my team. Yep. Do I hold James Conner or sell high? I would say if you're in need of wins, I don't mind just holding him and riding him until Chase Edmonds comes back. But if James Conner is your 3rd running back or your 4th running back, and you don't even necessarily need to start the guy, then I would probably sell him high and take DeAndre Hopkins and James Conner and try and get Davante Adams or something like that. Like I would try and sell him high in that respect, but if you need James Conner to help you win games for the next couple of weeks, go ahead and just hold him. Yeah, I kind of agree with that sentiment there. Who do I start today? Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool? I would go with Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson's consistently the guy that gets more targets, so I will side with him. But it is a pretty good matchup for Chase Claypool as well, so he could have a big play in this one. Trade Joe Burrow and James Conner for Josh Allen. Yeah, I would do that. I would rather have Josh Allen, assuming you don't need James Conner right now. Like I said, if he's like your 3rd, 4th running back and you can go without him, I don't mind making that move at all because Josh Allen is truly a difference-making quarterback. So I don't mind making that move at all. What do you think of Jeff Wilson Jr.? I mean, he's not a guy that I'm overly excited about from his own fantasy perspective. I'm just curious to see how he affects Elijah Mitchell. That's really all I care about with Jeff Wilson. Worth a speculative add if you have an open roster spot, but not a guy that I'm, excited about or relying on to any degree. 8-man PPR, one flex. I have Aaron Jones, Ezekiel Elliott, Cordero Patterson, Kupp, Jamar Chase, Mike Williams, Chris Godwin. I traded Godwin and Cordero Patterson for Dalvin Cook and Tyler Lockett. That's a great move. That's a great move. I would have done Godwin and Cordero Patterson for Dalvin Cook straight up, probably. Like maybe not, but like that would be a close move, especially in an 8-man. Actually, probably would. So the fact that you got Lockett in return, and it sounds like Russell Wilson could be back this week, coming off of the bye. So I don't know if he's going to be 100%, but I would say like his first chance of playing is this week. So Tyler Lockett is a guy that probably makes an appearance in the buy low video because he is a guy that is not valued at all right now. Like he has no value. So Tyler Lockett could be a guy that I go after right now. I've Hurts, Swift, AP, Diggs, AJ Brown, etc. I definitely need the upgraded RB2. Who would you package for someone like Aaron Jones? Okay, so if you're going after Aaron Jones, looking at your team right now. I don't know who Will is. Oh, Javonte Will. Okay. Edmonds, Carr, Jacoby Myers. It'd be hard for you to get to somebody like Aaron Jones based on the pieces that you have because the value doesn't necessarily align without you trading. Like, because I don't want to trade away Diggs, AJ Brown, or George Kittle because I think those guys are difference makers at their position. If you could somehow you said you have Hawkinson too. So if you could take Hawkinson and Waddle for a tight end needy team and go after a guy like Aaron Jones, that might be something that I try and go after. Maybe he wants a running back in return. You take Hawkinson and Javonte Williams and do that. That'd be like your best bet, but I would say the Aaron Jones owner isn't likely to accept a deal like that. So if you wanted to, like the most I'd be willing to give up is probably like Javonte and George Kittle for a guy like Aaron Jones or a running back of that kind of tier level. If you can get you already have Swift on your team, but if you can get somebody in that range, James Robinson or somebody like that for Hawkinson, Javonte, I'd be willing to do that. But I highly doubt the Aaron Jones owner is going to do something like that. Maybe they do. Maybe they're worried about Aaron Jones. He did have a down week this week, but that's probably something I'm looking to do. Great to see Elijah Mitchell catch some passes this week. Yep, definitely good to see. Picked up Taysom Hill after Jameis got hurt. Is he going to start as QB1? I would. If I was the Saints, I would start Taysom Hill because Trevor Siemian just, like, why? Like, why are we starting Trevor Siemian? Like, you were going to start Taysom Hill going into the year over Jameis Winston. Why are you not willing to start him now? Is Trevor Siemian that much better than Taysom Hill? I don't know why they don't start him. Maybe it was because he was coming off the concussion. They didn't want to put too much on his plate or something, and maybe they'll start him this week. I would start him this week if I was them. He gave me Pittman Jr. for low because he lost Henry for the season. Already had Jefferson, Tyreek, and Deontay Johnson. Okay, yeah, so definitely good spotting that and going to pounce on Pittman Jr. Dude, why is Amari underperformed so much after going off week 1? I mean, he went off last week too against the Vikings, so I'm not really concerned about Amari Cooper. But he hasn't been necessarily the guy that we thought he was going into the season because when Dak was on the field, early last year, Amari Cooper was like the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. He was so dominant, and the passing volume has really been the issue for both him and Lamb for being consistent and being, top 20 wide receivers every single week because some games they're just going to rely on Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard, and some games they're going to rely on the passing game. And it's making those wide receivers a little inconsistent, but I'm not really worried about either Cowboys wide receiver right now, to be honest. And CeeDee Lamb might make his first appearance on the buy low video this week. Newly subscribed. Thanks for the effort. No worries. Eat powder. Hopefully you stick around. Trade Burrow. Oh yeah. So I already answered that. Yes, I would do that for Josh Allen. Where would you rank Keenan Allen rest of the season? Go to my rest of season rankings right now. Currently, before this week, I think I updated them like midway through the week last week or the week before. I had Keenan Allen at wide receiver 13. He is going to move up because I have to move Calvin Ridley down because I haven't done that yet. And I also have to move his teammate, Mike Williams, down because, like I said, his role is changing. He's not being used the same way that he was at the beginning of the season. So Keenan Allen, to me, would be right on the borderline of the top 12. So currently right now I have Keenan Allen at 11. I would take him over Terry McLaurin, so I'm going to move him ahead of him. Deontay Johnson versus Keenan Allen is kind of a toss-up. Deebo Samuel, I do have to move down because of his injury, making him a little bit more risky. So I'm going to move him down a little bit. So Keenan Allen to me is like a top 10 receiver, I would say. He's probably top 10 receiver rest of the season is where I would rank him. Thank you. I understand now. You the man. Appreciate it. No problem. Should I be worried with? I'll probably answer the questions that are on the screen and then I'll head out of here. I don't want to make these too long because I do want some people to watch these back, get some value from them. But should I be worried with Aaron Jones or do I just clam down? Just clam down. I wouldn't be worried with Aaron Jones whatsoever. He didn't have Aaron Rodgers, so I'm not concerned. Now, where would you rank Aaron Jones rest of the season? Okay, so rest of the season, Aaron Jones, I got to go to my running back rankings. And again, we're going to update probably our rest of season rankings video this week on Friday. So stay tuned for that. I do have to move a couple guys up. Jonathan Taylor needs to go up. He was too low before, so I got to move him up. Aaron Jones to me is locked and loaded top 10 running back, is probably where I would keep Aaron Jones rest of the season. That's about the range that I'm looking at with Aaron Jones because, I mean, he's not going to be a top 5, top 3 guy because he simply doesn't get the volume workload of a guy like Austin Eckler or Dalvin Cook or Alvin Kamara or somebody like that. So he can't be in that range. And I also, would prefer guys like Jonathan Taylor who are simply more efficient right now than what Aaron Jones is presenting. And Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, the 2 injured guys, I would also take over Aaron Jones rest of the season. But DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, like that's kind of the range you're talking about because I do think guys like Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris have kind of overtaken a guy like Aaron Jones. So I currently have Aaron Jones at 11 right now, but you can make the argument that he could be ahead of Barkley or Swift or even Elliott. So I would say anywhere between 8 and 12 is probably where I would rank Aaron Jones. Drafted Barkley, Ridley, Carson, Julio, Miles Sanders, Aaron Rodgers, Antonio Brown, and going 3 and 6. I just want to give up. Any advice? Don't give up. You still have a chance, I would say, depending on how many people make your playoffs. Again, you're probably going to have to borderline win out. You'll probably need like maybe 1 or 2 losses maximum the rest of the season because you're going to need to go, 9 and 5 or whatever the rest of the year, or not 9 and 5, 8 and 6 the rest of the year. So I would say winning out is probably your best option at this point because 7 and 7 might not make the playoffs for you. So I would say you don't need to give up. Just keep going. Your team is starting to get healthier. Obviously, Ridley hurts, Carson hurts, Julio hurts, Miles Sanders hurts, but I would just keep going and keep setting your lineup and hope for the best. But it's not looking too great right now, I would say, but you still have a chance. Josh Jacobs for Hawkinson and Julio Jones. My tight end right now is Fant. Josh Jacobs for Hawkinson and Julio Jones. Yeah, I probably would do that. I think that's probably a smart move. Josh Jacobs is a guy that he's fine when he's on the field, but he does get nicked up a lot. And he is a guy that is not a high upside running back anyway. Like at the best case scenario, Josh Jacobs is like a top 20, 24 running back rest of the season anyway. So if he can get a guy that does make a difference for you at tight end with TJ Hawkinson and Julio Jones, who is at a very low price right now, and he does have a ceiling rest of the season with Derrick Henry out of the lineup, I do think that is probably a smart move to make. So I think I would make that move, Bryce. Just traded Jacobs and McLaurin for Eckler, wide receiver core. I don't even care what your wide receiver core. That is a phenomenal move. I don't care what your team looks like. Eckler is worth way more than that, in my opinion. What picks should I trade? Oh, sorry. We got a super chat from King Marcel. I didn't even see this. Sorry. Bad script, but trade Henderson for James Robinson, Russell Gage. I would rather have Darrell Henderson, personally. King Marcelo, thanks for the super chat. I didn't actually see that because it doesn't show up when it's under like $3, I think, on my top of my screen. So, yeah, sorry for getting to that late, but yeah, I would keep Henderson there. What picks should I trade for Knox and Dynasty? I need a tight end. The maximum amount of picks I'd be willing to give up for Dawson Knox is a 2nd round pick. So assuming you're like a contending team, I would give up your 2nd round pick for him. But if it's a projected early or mid 2nd round pick, I probably would not give that up. But if it's your 2nd round pick, mid to late, then I would be willing to give that up. Full PPR, currently 7-2. Need help with running backs. Got Dalvin Cook, Chuba Hubbard, Devontae Booker, Zach Moss, Javonte Williams, Kareem Hunt. Do I wait on Kareem Hunt's return? Want to grab Devontae Freeman for Zach Moss? Thoughts? So the best case scenario for you in this situation is probably to parlay 2 running backs into 1, I would say, because you have some guys that have some value like Hubbard, like Booker, like Moss, like Javonte Williams, like Kareem Hunt, but none of these guys are really like secured long-term, especially like the handcuffs that you have, Booker and Hubbard. So if you can take, it'll probably be harder now with Hubbard coming back from, or with Christian McCaffrey coming back, it'll probably be harder to trade Hubbard now. So I'd probably just hold on to him, and same with Booker with Barkley coming back next week. But if you can try and trade Moss and Hunt or Javonte and Hunt for, Leonard Fournette, or even, you can get Darrell Henderson low or something like that, I would probably try and do that because you have a lot of guys, but not a lot of like stability outside of Dalvin Cook. So if you can parlay two of these guys into one for a team that needs running back depth, I would definitely be looking to do something like that. I would try and trade a second for Knox, but much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly my thoughts too. Someone really send Connor for Deontay Johnson in my dynasty league. Oh, that's brutal. Rodgers or Wilson, or just a matchup thing. So I'm guessing you mean rest of season. I would say if Wilson is playing, I'd rather have Wilson. But Rodgers, given Wilson's injury, is probably what I would lean towards. But it is probably still just a matchup thing with those quarterbacks because they're both like back end QB1s. Aaron Jones with 5 killing me this week. Yeah, he definitely hurt me in a league as well. Thankfully, starting Love did not hurt me really. Needed that last touchdown. He had 114, 108. My opponent had A.J. Brown down 12. Yeah, I actually decided to pivot off of Jordan Love to Daniel Jones in my home league, which didn't work out. Thought it was going to. After that first Daniel Jones bomb to Evan Ingram, I was like, yes, big Daniel Jones game coming. And he just did nothing the rest of the game. So definitely hurt me there. But Jordan Love didn't do that much better. So it's not a big deal. Swift plus Judy or Higgins for Keenan Allen and David Montgomery. Okay, so I would rather, if you can, that's a pretty close deal. I think it's kind of a wash because you're getting the upgrade at running back with Swift over David Montgomery, but you're getting the downgrade at wide receiver the downgrade at running back from Swift to David Montgomery, but you're getting the upgrade from either Judy or Higgins to Keenan Allen. So it all really depends on what you need. I think it is a fair trade, whatever you decide. I personally lean on the side of Keenan Allen and David Montgomery just because Swift plays for a really bad team. Maybe they not shut him down, but like maybe they stop using him so much because they're losing so much. But I that's kind of narrative-y. I don't really think that's going to happen, but it is a risk, I would say. So David Montgomery and Keenan Allen are a little bit, safer from that perspective, but you do have the injury with David Montgomery. Again, like I said, this is a very fair trade, regardless of how you look at it. So I would probably just hold if you don't want to make any moves, but if you had to pick one of those two receivers, I would rather trade Judy than Higgins because of the offense that he plays in. I think T. Higgins has a bit more upside. So if you could trade Swift plus Judy for David Montgomery and Keenan Allen, I would probably do it, assuming you can stomach the risk of acquiring a guy like David Montgomery, who is a little bit injured. Now, I hope David Montgomery plays tonight in a limited fashion to get that limited part out of his way so he's not limited next week. So hopefully that happens tonight, but I think that's a pretty fair trade all around. Chubb for Aaron Jones. I would rather have Aaron Jones rest of the season. It's close, though. Those guys are like right in the same tier. Should I trade Aaron Jones for Saquon? Yes, you should. I would rather have Saquon rest of the season. David Montgomery possibly off IR tonight. Do you think Herbert will make a good amount of his touches away from him? Or is this David Montgomery's backfield when he's good to go? So I think this is David Montgomery's backfield when he's good to go. But tonight specifically, I think Herbert out-touches him if he plays. So David Montgomery coming off of a multi-week injury, and we know this. Running backs coming off of multi-week injuries do not play their full allotment of snaps. We saw it with Christian McCaffrey yesterday. He doesn't normally play 48% of the snaps. So David Montgomery, if he plays tonight, will probably play around 50%. So with Khalil Herbert, he'll probably have a good amount of volume this week. But going forward, I do think it is David Montgomery's backfield once he's back. Should I trade McLaurin for Mike Evans? Yeah, I would rather have Mike Evans rest of the season. 14-man super flex, full PPR. My roster is Tua, Teddy B, Taysom, D-Hop, McLaurin, Gallup, Ayuk, Myers, etc. 7-2. Any suggestions or thoughts? I would say because you're 7-2, I would just wait on some of the guys that you have here because CEH is coming back. Hunt will come back at some point. If you were like 2-7 or like 4-5 or something like that, I might have more suggestions. But because you're 7-2, I would just hold. My current team for next week is Brady, Carter, Harris, Hill, Claypool, Gronk, Deontay Johnson, I'm guessing, Matt Gay in the Bucs defense bench, Khalil Herbert or Justin Herbert, I'm not sure. Sanders, Ertz, Knox, Colts defense drop after weekend. I think you got the best possible roster in there. Yeah, I think you're good there. The first or worst mindset is real because I am in first in 2 leagues and last in 2 others. Yeah, I'm actually like not in a great position in my leagues right now. I've had a lot of injuries, especially in my dynasty leagues. So in my dynasty leagues, I'm kind of like in limbo, like 3-6 right now, or like 4-5 in a lot of them. So that is definitely not ideal. I'm in 4 dynasty leagues. I'm 3-6 in one, 4-5 in the other, and then I'm tanking in the other 2. So I'm like 2-7 or whatever. So it doesn't matter in those ones, but yeah, especially in the one that I'm 3-6 in the listener league, for the FSE listeners, I expected to be a contending team. I've had Saquon, Antonio Brown, number of injuries, so I'm not necessarily doing the best that I thought I could be doing right now. So hopefully I can, turn it around the rest of the season.
Evan says sitting with CMC, Najee, and Saquon, Khalil Herbert, Justin Herbert, and Rodgers, then Judy, T. Higgins, Sanders, blah, blah, blah. We're trading up to get a top 10 receiver. Unsure what would be a good offer. I mean, your receivers aren't really difference makers, obviously, so that kind of hurts you a little bit. But you have difference making running backs, so I would say you're okay. You have a difference making quarterback, a difference making tight end, and difference making running backs. You don't necessarily need elite wide receivers at that point. It all depends on your roster. If you have no difference making running backs, no difference making quarterbacks, maybe a TJ Hawkinson at tight end, then you would need better receivers. But you got to think of your team as like a full scale, right? Just because you're strong at other positions doesn't mean you can be weak at others, but you have good enough receivers that your running backs and quarterbacks and tight end can carry you. Does Najee get 23 tonight? I need his wife to go into labor and him to miss the game. I didn't even know his wife was pregnant, but Najee can get 23 tonight. Yeah, pretty easily. The workload he has, I would say it's like a 50-50 chance. Trade Mike Evans for A.J. Brown. I would rather have A.J. Brown rest of the season. Sell or hold James Robinson. I would hold him. It sounds like he was close to playing, so I'd imagine he'll be back next week. That could be, a speculation on my part, but I'm not really worried about James Robinson. I think he might even be a buy low candidate for some people that are looking for running backs. Would you rather have Stafford or Hurts? I would rather have Stafford rest of the season. I am the guy of the Colts defense drop weekend, so you know who I could trade Ertz for. I mean, Zach Ertz isn't going to fetch you a whole lot. If you can get a upside wide receiver like Rashad Bateman even, I would probably do that for Zach Ertz. I don't think Zach Ertz is very valuable going forward. Thoughts on Elijah Moore going forward? If you answer this, I do apologize. No worries. Elijah Moore going forward is probably going to be a guy that sneaks into the top 40-ish wide receivers for me going forward. But again, we need to see the playing time get up there because although he did have a great week and he was, productive, he didn't play more snaps than Jamison Crowder and Keelan Cole. So what we need to see from Elijah Moore is him run more routes than those guys because he is the best receiver on that team, in my opinion. I think he's the best receiver on that team, but he's still a rookie, so they're not giving him a full workload quite yet. So next week, coming off of that big performance, if we see Elijah Moore run 90% of the routes, then he's going to be wheels up a top 36 receiver for me. But right now, we haven't seen that yet. So he's going to be like top 45 type wide receiver until we see that. He's kind of in that Rondale Moore range where he's good when he gets the ball, but he's not on the field enough to get the ball consistently. Sometimes when you're a contender and have injuries, it helps you in the long run. Last year, a guy in my dynasty league got pick 103 because Chubb and Eckler got hurt. Honestly, dude, it does help you. It does, especially when you have your first round pick. Obviously, if you don't have your first round pick, it doesn't help you. But in my listener dynasty league, I do have my first round pick. So if I finish, one like with the 105 or the 106 or something, I could get a talented receiver or a running back to help my team out. But my team is like really good. I just have had so many injuries that it's not been ideal for me. Like I've had Debo, Julio Jones, Saquon Barkley. Some of these guys have just been Antonio Brown. My quarterbacks have been injured as well. So it's just not been great overall. 10-team half PPR, Joe Burrow, running back 1. Okay. Any big trades? Looking to trade Chubb high for a better running back. If you can trade Chubb, I guess I don't really know who your bench pieces are, but if you could trade Chubb in one of your bench pieces and try and get up to a Jonathan Taylor, a Najee Harris, a DeAndre Swift, even I would prefer DeAndre Swift to Nick Chubb rest of the season. I would probably try and do that. If you could trade Chubb right now, you might even be able to trade Chubb right now straight up for DeAndre Swift because, DeAndre Swift plays for a shitty team. People tend to undervalue him. But yeah, that's probably what I'd be looking to do, but I don't think you're in a bad position, even if you keep Nick Chubb, because you have Eckler, who's going to provide you that PPR aspect, and Chubb is your RB2. So Swift or Aaron Jones rest of the season, they're literally back-to-back in my rankings, but I would prefer DeAndre Swift slightly just because the receiving volume is so much so that he can withstand some bad matchups and things of that nature. Should I trade DeAndre Hopkins for Robert Woods? I would rather have DeAndre Hopkins personally. Thanks, brother. Sitting at 5-4, so hoping RBs can carry me through the playoffs. Yeah, your running back core is really good, so you should be able to be at that position. My God, my grammar was bad in that last message. My bad. No worries. What up, party people? What's up, Kyle? So I'm gonna head out of here. I've been on here for an hour. Yeah, no worries. So I've been on here for an hour. Like to talk rapid reactions with you guys, get some sense of who should be a buy low candidate for this week's video. Unfortunately, trade deadlines are going to be coming around soon for fantasy leagues, and these trade targets videos are my favorite to make. So I won't be able to make them forever, but stay tuned for that tomorrow. Stay tuned for the waivers tomorrow that Danny will be dropping. Like stream if you haven't already done so. I'll just answer this question real quick. Should I trade Fournette and Diggs for Najee? yes, I would. I'd rather have Najee than Fournette and Diggs if you can handle losing the receiver depth, Sally. So anyway, peace out, guys. Talk to you soon.